Okay, where I'm wanting us to be soon after we come back from lunch is to be able to, for you to start to think of how you'd fill this in for yourself, for your classes. So at the top of it, you might, if you're teaching a grade 4, it'll be grade 4. But if you're teaching, if it's like year 7 SOS, 7A SOS or whatever. Now, the sorts of items that I'm hoping that we'll have in that, at the end of each term, is what will your students be doing differently? What will they be doing differently, independently? And what will they be doing differently when you scaffold them? And thirdly, what will they be able to say that they're doing? Is that okay? If we get that in place. Number 2, how will your teaching be different? Now that's why at the beginning of the session after lunch I want to go through the 2 sorts of teaching. I want to look at teaching for scaffolding and teaching for automaticity. We've got to get the 2. Teaching for scaffolding, teaching for automaticity. And all it's going to be doing is bringing together the knowledge that's already here, because people have already mentioned what you do to get it automatic. The explicitness, Linda talked about, the why and where, the emotional bits that someone else mentioned. They're the key things we need to learn. But what I've tried to do is to do it very systematically. We need to be able to program for that. We're going to look at how we'll program for it. In time. Program in time. The third thing we need to look at there is what will the school leadership be doing in terms of instructional leadership. So if this has worked, by the end of term 3, you will have had different dialogue with your school leadership members than you will have had so far. If there hasn't been changed dialogue, there hasn't been instructional leadership. Because that's how it happens. It doesn't happen other than through talking. And so you can see that this plan in real life needs to be negotiated with the school leadership team. It's not going to work otherwise. It's not going to be nearly as successful. So, can you see where I'm coming from with this though? We're wanting a really clear plan. Now, I'm not talking about items. I'm not talking about saying a goal like we'll improve by 0.5 of a CSF level or things like that. That, to me, achieves nothing. What I'm wanting to see here as goals are the children will be able to work out the meanings of unfamiliar words. They'll be able to paraphrase sentences with scaffolding. They'll be able to read a paragraph and say what the main idea is. Is that okay? They're the thing. Because if I know that's my goal, I know what to target in my teaching. And I can target it session by session by session. I can make sure I know what it looks like in terms of student behaviours. If we can get plans like this in place, Lena, we're getting closer to implementing it. Is this all right, guys? Everyone happy with this? Because this is what we've got to get in place. And I thought that if we practiced getting it in place in your teaching, at least for the present, and you can iron out any bugbears, we're then better set up for taking it more broadly. How we would write up goals for each term. Now, in order to do that, we need to look briefly at what is involved in teaching to get at each of the strategies. Remember, we're wanting the students to learn particular actions they can take as they read. And we're wanting them to be able to tell us about them, to be able to talk about them, so we can make sure they can be telling themselves about the strategies. And we're looking at two stages of the teaching. And one of the stages is to scaffold. to scaffold the students to use strategies. A second aspect of the teaching is to almost de-scaffold, to teach the students to use the strategies independently. And we need teaching that is going to target both of those. So there is first teaching scaffolding them, and then there is going to be using the strategy independently. Now we have this topic that we're going to have the students learn by reading. They're going to learn about women in ancient Egypt by reading. And so, first of all, to get an idea of what the strategies are, I'm going to show you an example of what I'd be having the students do if I were going to be scaffolding them learning about it. So initially, our first strategy would be to do the first part of getting their knowledge ready. So imagine you're talking to someone, to a woman living in ancient Egypt. You know, what might you see? Well, you're looking at the woman. What's she wearing? Is she wearing the latest Italian sort of outfit or whatever? What might she be wearing? How might she be looking? What things might determine what she's wearing? Where might she be? You know, all those sorts of things. What would you see behind her? You know, all those sorts of things. What sort of things might she want to talk about? If you were the person you were going to interview, what might you want to say? So the first thing is the students getting their knowledge ready in an imagery way. And I could show the children pictures of Egyptian families or Egyptian people, ancient Egyptian people, and have the children talk about them and what the pictures show and so on. The second aspect is for me to cue the students now to get their knowledge ready in a language way. So it would be talking about pictures that are shown in sentences. If they've already suggested some words from their images, I might get them to put the words into sentences and say them. I might ask them to tell me questions the text might answer. Who questions, where questions. I might ask them to tell me some other key words that might come up in the text. How would they spell them? What are synonyms for them? And so on. And the third part of getting their knowledge ready would be for them to look at the text, look at the pictures, again, say what they say, paraphrase the title, say what they're going to do as they read it, look at, say where they might pause and consolidate and so on. So these would be the getting knowledge ready type strategies that I'd be cueing the students to use. Hopefully at that point they've got their knowledge ready and they've moved it to engage with the text. Now, I haven't had the students do a great deal without the scaffolding up until this point. I've been guiding them how to think. I'm going to ask the students to look at reading, you know, we're going to read through the text aloud. I'm going to ask them to read, take in turns to read one or two sentences aloud. And as they listen to themselves, really make sure they take on board what the sentence says and they tell themselves what they hear themselves saying. If we come to some unfamiliar words, I'm going to have the students look at how to say the new words in the text, work out what they might mean, suggest synonyms, link images with them. After we've read one or two sentences, I'll want the students to be able to tell me other ways of saying them, what pictures the sentences might make in their mind.